Well, hello, everybody, and glory to Jesus Christ. Welcome to another exciting episode of Building Athos in Our Hearts. It's my own Father Paul here, and you don't know who I am. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the difference, right, between like the end of the Great Fast and coming in to Holy Week, right? So there's a difference here. And so, well, first, sorry about this weird angle today and the light. I just can't get. It's the only time I have to record the video, and it's like horrible lighting in here. And also, I know I should have posted this video like I don't know, like a long time ago. Like I promised it like last week. But I've been ultra busy with like pastoral duties and praying and all that kind of stuff. And, so I guess that's a quasi legitimate excuse, but I'm just terrible at this YouTube stuff. So sorry it's been so long since my last video. I'm trying, man. I'm trying, but I guess we do what we can do. So I beg your forgiveness. But here we are anyway. So what's the deal, right, with Holy Week? Often I get the question when I say, okay, well, the fast ended last Friday, right? I'll say that. And so the Friday night before Lazarus, Saturday, I'll say, well, the fast is over, but now we're in Holy Week. And people say, well, aren't you Catholic? The Roman Catholics are still in Lent. I was like, well, yes. I mean, as if we are part of the universal church, yeah, you can say we're Catholic. Our bishops are in communion with the Bishop of Rome, so you can say we're Catholic, sure. But what does Holy Week have to do with that, right? What does fasting have to do with that? Anything, right? So often we have this modern Western idea of homogenization and uniformity, right? That everything has to be the same. Everything looks the same. If you're going to be called this certain thing, right? If you're going to have this moniker, that it has to be this sort of lockstep thing. But that's not what defines us, right? As quote Catholic, when you use such words, it's not what defines us as Christians and practices of piety and tradition are certainly different. So the big question, right? So I don't like talking about this stuff really, but I get this question so often, right? As far as like, well, how come the quote unquote Roman Lent is different from, your Lent? And I was like, I don't, I hate when that happens. So when we use those kind of monikers. So basically, here's what we have to come to terms with, that there are as far as we are concerned. See, I don't even want to talk about ecclesiology right now, but I guess I have to in this sense, and then we're just going to dump it and forget I ever said anything about it, just because I don't like having these discussions for tons of reasons. But basically, the way it's viewed in the quote, the universal or Catholic Church, we'll use those terms interchangeable right now. Universal Church is comprised of one Western Church and, depending on who you ask, 21 or 23, self-governing Eastern churches, right? So the Universal Church is made up of one Western Church and 20, we'll say 23 individual self-governing Eastern churches. There you go. So of course we're going to have different piety practices and different devotions and different ways of going about things depending on geographically where um, that particular church it comes from. That's just how it works, right? Like we have in the Eastern churches, right? The Melkites will do different things than the Ruthenians. It's us, the Ukrainians will see a lot of most similarities with us, but then, the Syro-Malabar, Syro-Malankar, like they'll be doing tons of different stuff, or like the Maronites, right? So all of these different Eastern groups, right? We're doing different stuff, but ultimately, like, what is this about, right? It's about Jesus Christ and the fullness of the faith, okay? Um, but yet somehow that gets boiled down to these silly discussions, right? Where it's like, well, how come your Lent is different from their Lent? And it's like, well, it's all the same Lent, right? It's all the same fast. It's just, um, unfortunately, we like these romanticized things, or we like controversy, or we like debate, right? And unfortunately, the answer I'm about to give is why do you guys have different lengths, which we don't? But why is there a difference in the counting of the days? It is such a boring answer. It is so not exciting. It is not controversial. It's like nothing at all. The answer is, ready for this one? Historical circumstance. And that's it. Like literally. Okay. So we have to look at the history of fasting, quote unquote, or the observance of fasting, we'll say, surrounding specifically Pascha itself. All right. And then what we kind of have to do is sort of like reverse engineer this in order to understand where it comes from. Now, everything I'm going to be saying today and referencing today comes from the Lenten Triodian that was put together by Metropolitan Callistos Ware and Mother Mary. Okay, so this is readily available. Unfortunately, the supplement that goes along with this is not as readily available. You can find it, but it's pretty expensive. I don't think there's anything that's currently published. But if anybody out there who's from a publisher who's going to, uh, hear this and say maybe we need a second run of that, that would be very helpful for a lot of people. But anyway, so what I'm referencing here, I'm not just making this up out of whole cloth. I'm referencing it from the Lenten Triodian of Callistos Ware. So if we look historically at the idea of fasting around Pascha, right? And so in this idea of fasting, we're talking about a preparatory period in which we get ready spiritually for a great feast. And so Pascha being the Feast of Feasts, right? The greatest of all feasts, the resurrection of the Lord. Of course, we will see like probably the most intense idea of preparation and fasting around it. So nowadays, right, we're used to the whole thing of like, oh, it's 40 days of Lent, and in more like the Western church and in the Western society, more or less, right? It's the, what are you going to give up for Lent? I'll give up chocolate. I'll still, I'll still swear, I'll still do this, I'll still do that, I'll still, do all these other things, but I won't have chocolate for a few weeks, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be pejorative, I'm just being a little silly, right? What we see, that's kind of what the modern, almost quasi secular idea of Lent is. But when we peel all of these onion layers back and realize that it's not just about like 40 days of self denial, that there's far more to this, then we find that, oh, like this actually has like some type of spiritual import and some type of meaning, right? So, right, we're used to this ideas of 40 days preparing for Easter. In the Eastern churches, specifically in the Eastern traditions, we see it differently, right? We see that the 40 days are not leading to Pascha, right? The 40 days are leading to Holy Week, which is completely different. So the 40 days of preparation are in preparing for Holy Week, not Pascha, right? And then Holy Week prepares us for Pascha. And then we also have this idea of like the pre-Lenten um, uh, weeks, right? Of leading up to the Great Fast, like right, going backward, right? You'd have cheese fair, then meat fair, right? Then the prodigal son, and then before that, Zacchaeus, before we enter into the period of the Triodian with the publican and the Pharisee. So going from there, um, we'll start at the beginning, Pascha itself. In the earliest traditions of the church, what we find is that there was the Triduum, right? The 3-day period leading up to um, Pascha itself, right? So that would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Um, and the intense fasting would essentially be 3 days of xerophagy, right? Of like no eating for the most part. And that was the original 3 days that we would use to prepare, right? Which makes sense because we're talking about the betrayal of Christ, the crucifixion, and then him being in the tomb, and then the commemoration and celebration of the open tomb and the resurrection on Pascha itself. Right. So I mean, originally though, if we really want to go like really, really far into this, which we're not going to do, but side note, that we have to kind of acknowledge originally that Nativity, Theophany, and Pascha would have all been commemorated on the same day, like really, really originally, because that is the summit of the idea of the salvific grace of Jesus Christ. But we'll put that aside for now and just say Pascha, resurrection, Easter Sunday, quote unquote, and Right. So in this sort of like rambling I'm doing right here, I promise we'll get to the point. All right, so we have Pascha, then the 3 days leading up to it would have been the original preparation period. Um, then we see in like the first written, concrete, hardcore evidence of a Holy Week observance we see in the Council of Nicaea in 325. Now that doesn't mean that people weren't observing it before 325. It's just that's the first concrete evidence that we have. So then the idea of Holy Week as a 6 day period of preparation um, comes into play, right? So we're looking like in the first nebulous, like 300 years of Christianity, we'll say, right? This the pre-Nicene period. All right, so in this, what we see as far as practices go, it varied. I mean, we would be some level of xerophagy, but I mean, try not eating for 6 days, period. That's kind of hard, right? So what we see a lot of evidence in is that there would be a idea of the first bits of food would be consumed after the ninth hour, right? So midday, like 3 o'clock ish. Um, uh, and then the fast would be broken, but still would be strict fast. No type of animal product, anything like that. But anyway, so it's not about the food, right? It's about the observance of the preparation, right? So then, as time develops, in the subsequent centuries after the fourth century, this is where we see the idea of a 40-day fast really start to coalesce, right, and become like an actual thing. Now, this is where we come into the why is your Lent different from their Lent problem. All right, so in Constantinople, all right, so this all has to do with historical circumstance and how people counted the 40 days of the fast, right? So in Constantinople, the question was, well, do we count Saturdays and Sundays during the fast as part of the fasting period? Same question in the western half of the Roman Empire. Do we count Saturdays and Sundays as part of the fast? Well, what we see here is just a simple disparity in how people decided to count. It's kind of arbitrary, if you ask me, right? So it's this silly little arbitrary thing that all of a sudden nowadays people have like, oh, it's this big question. It's like, well, it's really not a question. So what we see in the West is um, the fact that they chose to not count Sundays in the days of the fast. Whereas in Constantinople, they chose to just count all the 40 days, Saturdays and Sundays included, as part of like this overarching 40 days of the fast, right? It's just a period of 40 days. But this also does take into account that Saturdays and Sundays, except for Holy Saturday itself, are not days of strict abstinence, right? That there would be some food consumed during those periods, except of course Holy Saturday. That we'll put that to the side. That's a story for another time. Um, so in the West, explicitly, they said Sundays are not days of the fast. And in the East, they said no, Saturdays and Sundays will be days of the fast. So that gives the East, the East has then 40 days that start from the Monday after Cheese Fair Sunday, and that goes till the Friday before Lazarus Saturday at Vespers. That's when we kind of put the Great Fast to bed. So that's the Saturday before Palm Sunday. If we're looking at this on the western end of things. So now what we see then is there's a 6 days difference, right? So in the West, they had these 6 extra days. So, well, how do we sort of reconcile that? Well, it's very simple. Okay. We have these extra days. Well, first, their reckoning starts 2 days later than the West, right? So then that leaves us with these 4 extra days. All right. So from Ash Wednesday in the West, right? So we have Ash Wednesday. Then we get to the Friday before Palm Sunday, 4 extra days. Well, Saturday, and then there's Palm Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Holy Week. Those are considered 3 days of the 4 days, but then the first 3 days of Holy Week in the West are considered to be part of Lent, right? Part of Great Lent, part of the 40 days of the fast, where in the East, they're simply not. That's it. That's all it is. And then what do we see on online a lot of times? Do we see like, some kind of like, trolls and stuff like that being all like, oh, well, the East is better because it's older and we have a more robust tradition and blah, blah. It's like, come on, guys. No. If we want to try to be any type of semblance of Christian unity here amongst right believing Christians, like knock it off. Like that's what I'm saying. I'm going to be bold and say like knock it off, right? Um, and look, it's just a complete historical circumstance. I mean, Callistos Ware will tell you the same thing. Don't take my word for it. Go read it. I'm not, trying to get on a soapbox here that I've got it all figured out. I mean, Callistos Ware says the same thing, and that's where do you think I got it from, right? Like, I mean, I do have my own brain in my own. But anyway, it's not about me. It's about what the church has to say. So, and then we see, right? So that's all the disparity is, right? And of course, people like human beings love to take these kind of things, maybe make them like polemical, right? It's really not. It's just a difference in tradition is all it is. And we're not even going to go into observance of like customs during the fasting periods because that's we're already gotten specifically concerned about the disparity in Holy Week and what that means for us as Christians as a whole, right? As we choose to observe it. So for right now this is in the Eastern churches, we are currently out of the Great Fast, but it's an overarching period of preparation, right? Of the fast. And so we are now in Holy Week, as is the West. However, they still view as Lent is still happening, right? For them, but not um for us. However, here's what this means. We view Holy Week as a time of increased prayer and increased fasting, right? And this is the last few days, right? Those last 6 days leading up to ratchet it down, right? To really ramp up in our preparation, right? And that's what it's really all about is to get ready for the coming of the Lord and his resurrection. And in this, we see one little also interesting tidbit that Callistos Ware points out regarding the preparation for the pre-Lenten Sundays, right? So it's like we're preparing for, if we go back at the beginning or so, Pascha. So we're preparing for Pascha. Then Holy Week prepares us to prepare for Pascha, but then the fast prepares us to prepare for Holy Week that prepares us to prepare for Pascha, right? It's like crazy. But then there's also the pre-Lenten Sundays that prepare us to prepare for, and it goes down the line again, right? And so where do we see this? Well, between the 6th and the 11th centuries, this is like totally interesting. Another historical artifact, right? So we talked about how Constantinople and Rome kind of viewed the days a little differently. Well, some Palestinian Christians counted the days even differently and did not count Saturdays or Sundays in the reckoning of that fast, right? So then what this did is that gave that extra period, right? We had to tack on some days somewhere. Boom. There's your ideas of the pre-Lenten Sunday, starting with Cheese Fair Sunday. And then by the 11th century, we see all of this to be coalesced into this whole idea of fasting, right? Of the Great Fast, of this period. It's not just 40 days. There are 40 days of the fast, but the fast overall is a far, far greater concept than simply 40 days of not eating meat or 40 days of not drinking beer or 40 days of not swearing or going on play video games, not eating chocolate. Like that's not what this has to do about, right? So ultimately, the question here lies in, as we are in Holy Week right now, what am I doing to prepare spiritually for Pascha? Have I not observed the fast at all? Well, what does the catechetical homily of St. John Chrysostom tell us on, Resurrection Matins, on Pascha itself, right? He who arrives at the 11th hour has the same recompense as he who arrived at the first. And we also hear this in the Gospel of Matthew, right? He's clearly referencing that. So it doesn't really matter, nor should it matter to anybody what an individual was doing. You know, man, like if you're seeing this right now and you're called up and like, yeah, maybe I should do something, do anything to prepare. Maybe, you know, I don't even know what to tell you to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You figure it out. But the thing is this, right? What are we doing to prepare ourselves for Pascha? Are we so distracted by and do we like are we so deluded by things like this is better or that's better or we do this and you guys don't do that or you guys don't know what you're doing and all this, right? What are we doing? That's not helping anybody get to the kingdom. Okay, as we pray the prayer of Ephraim, right? Let me see my own sins and not judge my brothers and sisters. So I think the whole difference in the Western sort of like mindset in the fast, right? And the Eastern mindset in the fast, they're different, but ultimately we try to arrive at the same point is, am I able to sacrifice the things of this life for the age to come, right? Am I able to kind of like hedge my bets and say, yes, I will be a little hungry today, so I will not die of starvation tomorrow, right? That kind of idea, right? This ancient idea that I can, because of my God-given rationality, figure these things out. I can, quote, hedge my bets on the fact that Christ, has risen and he will, come again to judge us all. And I just need to make sure that I am concerned with my own salvation, as Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain tells us. So ultimately, when we are fasting, we should turn inward. We should look at ourselves and look where we've gone astray, where we've gone awry in our own lives, and realize that just as Lent, Great Lent, the fast is a far greater construct than simply not having chocolate for 40 days. Our salvation, too, right? Our self denial, our asceticism, our preparation for the Feast of Feasts is far greater to do than anything we could possibly imagine. And if we focus on Holy Week, on the next few days, focusing on getting ourselves as prepared as possible, as if on Sunday morning we were literally going to be standing before the Lord at the final judgment. That's how we have to look at this, right? We spend these next few days getting our stuff together, proverbially cleaning our room, cleaning the room of our soul, getting it organized, getting it ready, getting everything prepared so that when that bridegroom does come in the middle of the night, we are prepared. We are ready to be received. So I think ultimately the point of this video is just to shed a little bit of light on like why the two there's that sort of like dissonance as to like, wait, Lent's not over. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It's really just historical circumstance. And really what I'm hoping to do for this is to give that resource of the Lenten Triodion by Callistus Ware and Mother Mary for those who may not be aware, but also just to say, great, we're fasting. Okay, but are you praying, right? What are we doing here? That's the whole question, right? And so I would encourage us all to simply find the Lord in our life, in the little things, It's okay to be a little hungry. It's okay to put aside some things to say, well, it's time to pray now, right? And all that. So over the next few days, let's really just focus on Jesus Christ and just let him into our hearts and open our minds to the fact that the most important person in all of this, and this might sound antithetical, this might sound anti-Christian, this might sound selfish, but it's me, it's ourself, right? The most important person in all this right now is myself and my relationship with Jesus Christ, right? It's my salvation. The only person's salvation that I can be concerned with is my own. So I have to take responsibility for that. God gave me one soul, one life, one salvation, and it is mine to be responsible for. So we look toward the cross, we look toward Jesus Christ, we look toward Our Lady and all the righteous ones, and we empty ourselves of the earthly things to fill ourselves with the Lord. So keep the name of the Lord on your lips and in your heart at all times. And don't be led away by all kinds of strange teachings. Remember your fathers and remember what they taught. And if we do this, if we follow this example, we too will find ourselves being freed of the cares of this life, and we will be living in the here and now, not for this age, but for the age to come, right? And this is the ethos that we need to embody as Christians, and we could do it in our own homes. We could do it right here. We could do it with our families, and it's absolutely wonderful. So I encourage you all to just do it, just live it, just start right now if you haven't, and if you have, keep going. We've got a few days left, and we'll get there, right? The whole point of it all is is to get to the other side, to get to the kingdom, and we will make it there, and we can bring one another with us as long as we are concerned with ourselves first. So God be with you all. Please know of my prayers through the rest of this Holy Week. And as always, please check in with your pastor, your spiritual father, or your spiritual mother, and make sure what you're doing is right for you and in line with your particular jurisdictions and with what you are able to do as an individual. So please, share the good word. Please like and subscribe, follow for exciting things. And God willing, once Pascha rolls around, I'll be a little more regular with my posting, and we can maybe pick up some speed on the channel here. So God bless you all. Know of my prayers, and may the blessing of the Lord be upon you through his grace and loving kindness always, now and ever and forever. Amen. A blessed rest of the Holy Week to you, and a wonderful, glorious, blessed Pascha. God be with you.